So you want to take your flattened part and you want to try to slam it onto the bat because you want to get a suction. Okay? So kind of slam it on there. You probably, I see some people, they'll get like the center of their bat a little bit damp. They think that forms the suction better. You don't want your bat wet. You don't want this to slip off when you are throwing. So I slammed it on there on a dry bat with nothing underneath it, like no dry particles of clay. And then I'm just going to take my hands and I'm going to push down on all sides. Okay, I really want to form a suction. I do not want this thing to fly off. Okay, if you try to throw it down and it's like way off, if it's way over here, you want to move it back. You want it to try to be in the center. Okay, couple things that are super important. Your elbows, you want to have in. Okay, that is just gives you more strength, more balance, more power. Okay, it's really natural, and this was the same for me, to want to do this when I was throwing. Okay, so I might be walking around elbows in. You want your elbows in and grounded to your legs. So 3 big things: elbows connected, grounded, lots of water, and take your hands off slow. Okay. As soon as you feel resistance on your hand, add more water. So this small sponge.
I'm just filming.
Okay. This small sponge I use to get water onto the clay. Okay. You could use your hands. I like to use the sponge, drip it there, set it off to the side. So typically, right now is maybe you want to go a little bit faster. As I go through, I'm going to get slower. Okay. So I make sure my hands are wet too. As soon as I feel resistance, I add water. So the first thing I'm going to do, my elbows are in, I'm going to squish my hands together. First thing we do to get it centered is called coning up. So those yellow papers, it says cone up. I'm doing the coning up part right now. This is not centering, but it is getting it to be centered. You're going to distract me. No laughing. Okay, so as I apply pressure, I'm starting from the bottom. It's going to raise this. And you're going to just get the feel for it, but I'm kind of squeezing my hands together, and it's starting to drag it up, so I go up with it. Okay, if I just kept my hands at the bottom, this thing is going to start to want to warble like that. So another big thing is that you control the clay. You do not let it control you. I see a lot of people doing this as it's going around. You are stronger than the clay. So I'm coning it up. Okay, once I have it coned up, this is where I'm going to center it. So my right hand is on top. My left hand is on the side. I am going to push down with my right hand. And I'm not like this. I see a lot of people do this. My elbow's in. Even though I can't have it grounded on my leg, I have it in close to my body. I'm pushing down with this part of my hand. Okay? It's not a full-on 90-degree angles, and it's not a 90-degree angles that way either. So I am first pushing this down. My right hand is kind of guiding it in. If I just push this down, it's going to start to do that. Ooh, we don't want that. Sorry. If I just push down, it's going to want to do that. So my left hand is kind of guiding it in a little bit so that it doesn't completely mushroom or pancake out. I totally messed that up. I'm just going to cut that out. Sorry. Okay. So I'm pushing down right now, but my hands are connected kind of like a bird's nest. I use weird words for this stuff. As you can see, I'm going to slowly take my hands off. I'm pushing it down. This is getting flatter. I am starting to center it. Okay, more water. I am still pushing down. My left hand's kind of guiding it in. Okay, now that I'm getting lower, I'm going to keep pushing down. Okay, now this is the part where we're really trying to get it centered. So right now, I want it to be about the height of my hand this way. And now that I kind of have it down to this part, I'm going to really be pushing in with my left hand. Okay, this warbly ripple bump out here, I am going to knock out with my left hand. So I am applying pressure in and a little bit of pressure down. Before it's been a lot down, a little in. Now I kind of have it switched. More in with this hand and a little bit on top. Because if I just push it in right now, it's going to raise this. So I have a little bit of pressure on top. I am going to use a lot of force, and I'm going to keep pushing until I feel with my hand that it is smooth and not knocking around anywhere that it's spinning. So I want a lot of water, and I just keep applying pressure, mostly with my left hand, a little bit with my right. I keep pushing that in. Also, my left hand is all the way down to the bat. It's touching the bat. That's important. Okay, so I keep pushing in, and you'll kind of see it. Once I don't feel a bump going around with my left hand, and it's smooth on the top, I slowly take my hands off. Okay? This is centered. Let me just do it a little bit more. Okay, slowly take my hands off. Ways to know that it's centered. And sometimes it's harder to tell when you're going slow. I'll speed it up. If I don't see that it's knocking around, and I'll show you what it looks like to knock around here in a minute. If I don't see that it's knocking around, it's centered. When I check for it, I'm going to get my hand wet, and I'm going to hug it around the outside like this. See how my hands are not moving? They're staying there right in place, even though the rest of it's moving? That is centered. Okay? You can knock it off centered, but this, getting it centered right here, is the first thing you guys need to show me. Okay? Do not do anything else until you have it right here. Okay? Sorry, I should have kind of been telling you because I have a glare. So I coned up, I pushed down. I can't read because it's a glare. Okay, yeah, so right now I push down to center. This is centered. You check it off with me here. So let me show you off centered. So here, look, I got it centered. Look, I took my hands off fast. Does that make sense? People get excited. They're like, oh, I have it. It's centered. So can you guys see how the top of that's now knocking around? And if I put my hands around here, my hands are all bumping around. Do you guys see the difference? Okay. So, if you come and ask me for help, I will show you, and I'll probably ask you first if it's okay if I touch your hands, because it's really it's knowing how much pressure to put, and it's like kind of really hard to teach because I wish you could put your hands into mine and feel exactly what I'm doing. You know what I mean? But take your hands off slow, and then let me see if I can get some water off of here. So see how it's kind of shiny right now? You can see how it's less shiny. I need more water right now, and you'll be able to feel the resistance. It should slide on your hand easily without kind of wanting to pull you, okay? You also want to have this shape. I see a lot of people have a shape that looks like a hill. You want it to kind of look like this, okay? So again, big things. My elbows are in, and I keep applying pressure mostly with my left hand until I have that smooth, not hitting all the way around. And then I can't forget, I gotta take my hands off slow, because I'll see them centering it, and then they go, look, it's centered, and then it's like this, and that's not centered anymore. Okay? Any questions on this part? Okay. So, even though it's not centered, I keep applying pressure until I get it there. Okay, see how now my hand, and you go by feel, because some people are like, it doesn't look centered. Well, is your hand bumping around? Do you feel it knocking in your hand anywhere? Does that kind of make sense? It might not make sense to you guys, it's gonna do. Okay, centered. You check this part off with me. Next, it says index finger to open. So this is what I want to do. Because I can still knock it off center. Good job, Sebastian. Good. My left hand locks right here. I'm not really pushing, it's just locked because I just want to open the middle of this. I don't want everything to open with it. So if this hand is locked, I'm going to take my index finger, whatever feels comfortable for you, and I'm going to push down at a 45-degree angle because I am opening it. Okay? I'm not sticking it in at a 90-degree angle like this. I see people do that because I want to be able to see how far down I'm going. So that's why I'm opening at a 45-degree angle. Guys. Sometimes, here's where you will really kind of know these next few steps. You might get an air bubble. If it's an air bubble, it's not going to feel smooth. It's going to feel, you'll feel it. It'll feel like a pocket or something. If I get one, I'll show you. But if you get an air bubble, you want to stop the wheel. You'll take your needle tool. You'll usually be able to see it. You'll stab the air bubble and kind of stab around it because it's kind of like an iceberg, how it can be bigger underneath, and then just smooth it over. Okay, but I might get one, but usually right now you can tell. So I want to open it up, and I want to, I don't want to open all the way down to the bat, but I also don't want to have this much down at the bottom. So I'm going to kind of show you how far down I've opened. Right now it's at like a 45-degree angle. Okay? And so I want to be able to see how far down I'm going. And that's why, please don't laugh when I do this. That's why, because I see people do this, they stick it in. I can't see how far down I'm going if I can't even see where my finger is. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure you're sticking at a 45-degree angle because I'm opening it. Now that I have it open, and that looks like this white paper where it says no, thick, and then yes, even walls. I've opened it. Now I want to pull those walls towards me so that they are perpendicular, like the bottom picture. So now that I have it opened, there's such a glare on there. I cannot read what the next one. It says pull open toward you. Okay, so now it kind of depends on how much clay I have, whether I use a finger, a couple fingers, or my hand. But I take it, it's thicker right now at the bottom like a V shape, and I'm going to take that V shape and I'm going to pull it towards me so that it is perpendicular. Okay, so I'm just going to take it. I'm going to pull it all the way open towards me so that top is getting a little. Make sure you have water. My hands are getting dry, so it's making it stick. Okay, it might make fingerprints down there, so I'm just going to take my sponge and smooth that down. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like. So this is like the bottom picture, yes, even walls. I have pulled it all the way open towards me. Do you guys see the difference? Instead of that V shape, it is now 90 degrees. Beautiful. Okay. You do not, because now I'm going to raise these walls. I'm going to pull them up. I'm going to stretch the clay upwards. If I had a V shape, it's thicker down at the bottom. It will never be even walls because it's always going to be thicker at the bottom, right? Also, if I'm going to make a bowl, so this bottom of my bowl, I took the sponge and I pushed down to smooth it out. You don't want to see like fingerprints and swirls in there. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to pull the walls up. You do a hand switch. My left hand has been on the outside the whole time. Now it's going to be on the inside. And this is where people do it different ways a lot. I like to have a sponge in my outside hand. Some people do not like that. So you need to figure out like what you're comfortable with. Okay, this is the part where I for sure want to slow it down, but I don't want to go too slow either. Kind of like driving a stick. And what I'm doing is my hands are going to, one on the inside, one on the outside. They are going to meet. They need to be in the same spot, parallel to each other. Not one in front, one behind, high or lower, next to each other. I am first going to start to pinch it. Okay, it's going to grip the clay. Once I feel comfortable and have a good grip on the clay, I'm going to take it and I'm going to go all the way up. Okay, and I always go from the bottom to the top. So this is where I see a lot of kids, they just don't have the confidence, and I get it that it can be a little bit scary, but when they don't have the confidence, they start to kind of panic, and this is where everything gets thrown off. So my hand, what I'm using is I'm using like this part of my hand. Yeah, this part of my hand. I'm not using my fingertips, okay, because I don't want to jab it. I'm using this part of my hand and the sponge. My finger's like this on the outside of the sponge, okay? People think people think that I'm pulling up with just my left hand. They think that my thumb is pulling outside too. It's not. It just can't fit in there comfortably. So I'm using the pressure for these two hands. My thumb is just out here not doing anything, okay? And people can pull up like this, but if you're throwing a big tall vase, you can't do a pull like that because your hand can only go down so far. So that's why you do need to know how to pull this way. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure it's wet. I'm going slowish. Not too slow. I'm going to start gripping the clay, and watch down here. You're going to see an indent start to happen, kind of. So I am first, notice my hands are connected, grounded. I am first getting my grip. I am feeling what's comfortable. I'm applying pressure right now. That is where I'm going to start to pull up. I now bring my hands up. And then when you get to the very, very top, kind of ease up. You don't need to be jabbing so much there. I see people kind of still really applying a lot of force, and it makes a fingerprint right at the top, which isn't the end of the world. Just try to remember when you get to the top. Don't panic. Once you start to do it, just go with it, okay? Now, I'm not applying so much pressure that I'm getting all these fingerprints as it goes up, and I am not just sliding my hands up. So that's why I'm saying it's kind of like driving a stick, where you want to find what pressure is going to work where you're moving the clay. You do as many pulls as you need to until it is this kind of glass half empty, half full, but until it is either thick enough or thin enough, okay? Think about it. If I was to make this a bowl, would that be a good bowl, or is that going to be too thick? I would say that's probably where I want to be. I think it's a little thicker down at the bottom, so I am going to do one more pull, but you could do it in 5 pulls, you can do it in 2 pulls, you do how many ever pulls you need to. If you're going fast at this point, gravity's going to want to take it out, okay? And sometimes when you're pulling up, it kind of does go out a little bit, so I'm doing the same exact thing. I'm getting I'm pinching it together to get my grip, and I'm going up with it. If you get too thin, it will start to warble and it will cave in. Sometimes when you pull up, I did a pretty good job, it will make this shape. Before you do another pull up, take your hands, get them wet, and cone it back in so that it's perpendicular to the ground. okay? You don't want to keep pulling up and having it go out this way. Try to consciously pull up 90 degrees. Does that make sense? Okay, what I will be looking for, I'm going to check it off getting it pulled off with you, or getting pulled up with you. What I am looking for is I want your walls to be as even as possible. I don't want to be real thick at the bottom and then real thin at the top. If it's still really thick at the bottom, you need to do another pull, or a couple pulls, okay? I see this happen a lot, is I come to check it off and the hole inside is like this big. And I'm like, well, how did you pull up? Because you can't even get your hand down there. So I need to know that you know how to pull. If it's too small like that, because I haven't seen this lately, but I used to see this a lot, is people would think I was pulling up by just doing this on the outside a lot of times. So it'd keep getting narrower and narrower. I am not. I might kind of push it back in to get it perpendicular, but I am not really pulling up that way. I will say I've seen people pull up like this, where they start from the bottom. See how my hands are way different without the sponge, and they pull up like this. And then I also have people say, do I have to have a sponge on the outside? I don't like that sponge on the outside. No, it's whatever you feel comfortable with, because the first thing you need to do is get your grip. Don't just go for it. Get your grip. Find what feels comfortable. Right here, I'm comfortable. I'm getting a grip both sides. My hands go up at the same time. Okay, and then another thing is if you're going too slow right now, because sometimes the top will be uneven. Right now it's really even. If you're pulling up and you're going super slow and it's not doing like one full rotation as you go up, you're only pulling up on like a half rotation, then you're not pulling up evenly. It's going to start to get lopsided. Does that make sense? So if I was going like this slow and my hands are going up faster than it is a full rotation, it's not being pulled up evenly. Does that make sense? So you don't want to go super fast, but you also don't want to go super slow. If your top gets uneven, take a needle tool, ground it on your leg or on this called splash pan. And what I'm going to do is while it's spinning, I'm going to have a catch hand in here. I'm going to make, again, it has to be grounded, okay? And I'm going to slowly come in until I meet my finger, and then you want to take it off up a little bit fast. Otherwise it can kind of hit that and knock it off center, okay? But if it's uneven, do that. And I'm just going to take my sponge and smooth out the lip of that a little bit. Okay. Pulling it up, this is where I will check it, and I will come and I will guide my hands up like that and see if it's too thick. Questions on that? So those are your first two things you're going to get checked off: centering and pulling up. And the first day you're on a wheel, just because you get it centered that day does not mean you are locked in for life. Okay, it's practice, as with anything. All right, here's my cylinder. I'm going to say try to get a 6-inch cylinder. Just don't have it be this big. I need to know that you know how to pull up. Okay, does that make sense? Now, first real project, 2 bowls. Here I'm going to make it a bowl. I'm going to make sure my hand is wet. I'm going to start from the bottom. Bowls are wider. Oops, not too fast. This hand is kind of just guiding the outside. I'm starting from the bottom and I'm pulling towards me, 6 o'clock. Okay, so you will see it. It will widen. Oops, don't go that fast. Make sure your hands are wet. And then I'm going to kind of guide up here. I need it to be a little bit more wet. This bowl's a weird shape thing, so I'm going to trim it off a little bit so I don't like how tall it is. Get my hands wet again. And the reason why I have you do 2 bowls is your first bowl is probably not going to come out that great, right? Your second bowl will be a lot better. So that's why I make you do 2. Another important thing, stop it, look off to the side. It looks a lot differently looking at it at this angle than it does from the side. Okay, sometimes when I look at this, I don't know if you can tell, but it's going in a little bit right around here. I don't like that. I'm going to put more pressure right there. It's little things like that. Now, there's different bowls. There's not really necessarily one bowl that's right and one bowl that's wrong. I just don't want it to be a cylinder. I want to know that you know how to pull out. Okay, so I don't want to see something like this. That's just a cylinder. So, kind of like in that shape, I guess I should show you how to use some of these tools. Metal rib tool, wood rib tool. I don't really use a lot of these a whole bunch, but these tools you can use to kind of hold out here and kind of smooth it out, gather that clay, the slip kind of, it will kind of go like this. Oh, I should have said this too. You might have seen me, my hands might get a lot of slip, I'll scrape it off the walls like that, okay? You don't want to have a whole bunch of slip piling up because you're not scraping it off on the side of the bucket. These parts that I cut off, I can save for later and reuse those. I hung them right here. So metal rib tool, wood rib tool, you can use for that. This wood knife tool I can use to kind of clean up the bottom of this here. I'll kind of scrape it off a little bit. Again, I don't use it a whole bunch. Sometimes I will. These tools are for trimming, and I'll show you that. The wire cutter you'll need to use. Last thing I want to do, let me clean off this bat to show you. Oh, I can't really show you, but I have a pile of water in here. I'll just pour it out. I would take my sponge and pour it out. I have a bunch of water in here and like a button looking thing because of just how I was throwing. I don't want that to be in there, so I'm going to take the sponge and I'm just going to put pressure down to make it smooth in there. Another thing is, and kids will turn in projects and it has a bunch of slip all over it, is take your sponge, get rid of that slip, get it smooth as you want it to be, because if it dries on there, it's going to get fired on there, it's going to stay on there. Okay? Now, I am done with creating the part of it. And now I will need to trim a foot. You have to cut it off the bat. Do not take it off the bat. Cut it off the bat. I always run my hand on the wire cutter to make sure there's no dry particles. I wrap it around my fingers. I want to hold it tight across, and I want to push down because I want to cut it off the bat without this slipping up and then cutting like a rainbow part over it. Does that make sense? So you can either do it with the wheel spinning, but I'm holding it tight out, and I am pushing down on the bat. Okay? You either do it while spinning a little bit, not too fast, and then just pull it straight towards me. Okay? I do not touch it. If I was to take this off the bat, it would warp. Okay? So I leave it on the bat until it gets leather hard. And see.